I'm the kind of person who's always wanted to change the world. I've always perceived that there are lots and lots of things wrong. I've always wanted to make people happy. And for many years I was very politically involved. And then when I hit my 40s, I got very disillusioned, not just with politics, but with my own life. I was struggling. And struggling to be peaceful and happy just doesn't seem to work. So then I had a number of experiences which really changed my life. The first of them, I was driving to Seattle one day and I was feeling really good. And I entered a state of awareness that was far beyond just feeling really good. Now, what occurred is actually indescribable. I'm going to try to describe it, but I want you to remember that it's actually indescribable. I experienced a sense of, let's call it oneness, joy, delight, intense peace. It was a very intense experience. The first thing I really remember is that everything became incredibly beautiful, absolutely stunningly beautiful. Everything was suffused with gold. So I pulled over, I got out, I stopped the car and I got out and I just stood there looking around, just feeling absolutely, utterly amazed. And I remember thinking that no matter what I may have thought the phrase "all is well" actually means, in those moments I understood the meaning of the phrase "all is well" in an absolutely different way. There was no possibility that anything could be wrong. Nothing could be wrong. So I don't know how long this state carried on. Maybe I stood there for 15 minutes, maybe half an hour. At some point I got back in the car and carried on to Seattle. And over the next few days the sensation faded and I got back into my busy life. The thing that really stayed with me was the knowing, and it is a knowing, a very, very deep, undeniable knowing, that there was nothing that I could do or have that would be as powerful as being in that place of peace. So I carried on with my life, and a couple of months later I looked at my life and there I was back being busy all the time. I certainly wasn't being in that state of peace on a daily basis. I wasn't even close to it. So I said to whoever one says these things to, I said, I want to be in that place of peace on a daily basis, and I am willing to do whatever it takes. Whatever I need to do, I will do in order to be in that state on a daily basis. So I carried on with my life, being busy every day, and then a few weeks later, it was actually December 27th in the year 2000, I was riding my horse late one afternoon, and I don't remember what happened, but I must have fallen on my head. We found my helmet cracked in the road the following day. I remember waking up very slowly. I must have been lying there unconscious for several hours. It was extremely dark. It was a very dark night. And I was very, very cold. And I remember slowly becoming aware that this body was in trouble and it needed help. I needed to find some other human beings who could help me. I couldn't walk, but there was a vehicle nearby and I tried to crawl over to it. And then I realized that I was in the driveway of my house, and it was an instantaneous realization. I remembered who I was, and I remembered that the closest person who could help me was about a mile away by road, and a very long walk through the woods. I couldn't even walk. It was extremely dark. Even if I'd been able to walk, I wouldn't have been able to make it down there without being completely bruised and scratched. The next thing I remember, I was in the house down the hill, and the woman who lived there was putting a blanket over me as I lay on the floor and telling me she called an ambulance. She told me later that I just fell in the door. The question is, of course, how did I get there? Because I certainly didn't get there by any physical means, because apart from the bruise on my head, I didn't have a scratch or a bruise on me. So I certainly didn't walk down there by road or through the woods. I couldn't walk in any case. It was a miracle along the lines of a woman who picks up a car because her child is trapped underneath it. I was taken to the hospital and diagnosed with a serious case of concussion. I actually was very happy. I couldn't finish the sentence and all my friends were really worried about me, but I was very happy. For a couple of days I just sat and admired this incredibly beautiful world we live in. And people would ask me a question and I would start to answer, and then I'd look around and get distracted by the beauty around me. What really stayed with me from the whole experience is that I really was not afraid of dying. My friends were afraid I would die. I knew that I would die when the time was right for me to die. And in the meantime, what was really important was for me to live joyfully, to live fully and joyfully. So I carried on with my life and started getting busy again. And then I got really sick. I didn't go to a doctor then because I recognized that what was happening was that my way of being in the world was changing, and the accident and the sickness were a way of getting rid of those old limiting belief systems that I no longer wished to live by. But I was still hounded by the question, who am I? Who put me here in this world? And what am I supposed to be doing here? Some beings who are not in human form, who speak through a friend of mine, and let me just interrupt this to say that in general I don't have much truck with channeling. I think a lot of channeling is nonsense. But these particular beings were helpful, and they recommended that I look in the mirror and look not at Mikaya looking back at me, but look into my eyes and see who was looking back at me. So I imagined that I would stare soulfully into my eyes for a few minutes. What actually happened when I looked into the mirror is that I jumped back in shock. It was really quite a frightening experience. It was just my own face that I saw in the mirror, and yet what I saw was a being who was all-powerful, all-knowing, and existed outside any concepts of time and space. Now, Marianne Williamson, in her book, A Return to Love, says, I quote, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure." And I can attest to her that that what I saw in the mirror certainly frightened me. It was powerful beyond measure. What stayed with me after that experience was that it was really silly for me to be frightened, to be motivated by fear in any way. And what I want to do is to be motivated by trust in all that is, all that I am, in the knowing that all is well. And in living a life where I'm motivated by trust, I'm going to experience a peace and a joy. I'm going to be living fully. And what I'd really like to do in this world is to help other people on the journey to changing their lives, to living more fully in peace. I certainly know that it can be a long, slow journey. I want to finish this conversation with a quote from Rumi. Rumi was a 14th century poet who is apparently now the most popular poet in the United States. And Rumi said, "Out beyond ideas of right and wrong, there is a field. I'll meet you there. I'll meet you there."